Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Jordan Naheesi from the Culture 316 podcast here to welcome you to another episode and edition of the Culture 316 podcast. As you can see, it's just me today. It's actually the night before release date and time. Gosh, I've been moving from one place to another. A lot has been going on in my personal life. But thank you guys so much for joining us. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to give this show a 5-star rating and subscribe as well. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or anywhere where podcasts can be visually streamed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to remember that our next 316 space is, I think it's Crown Jewel. So be sure to be on the lookout for information about that. And thank you guys so much for being part of our space for Fastlane. It was so much fun. Obviously, it's always great building with you guys and connecting with you guys. Mo came back and she's actually slated to, you know what, I'm going to keep that to myself. Y'all going to find out soon. But man, it's not going to be a long show. I'm not going to hold y'all. It's not going to be a super long show. There's not really much to talk about except for Tuesday. Can we talk about Tuesday? Can we talk about Treacherous Tuesday, Toxic Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, whatever you want to call it, man? It was a wild night of pro wrestling as AEW and WWE NXT went head to head. I believe that AEW kind of moved time slots. They're usually scheduled for Wednesday. They moved to Tuesday due to MLB postseason things. And so Dynamite went head to head with WWE NXT. Now, obviously, during the course of the build up to these programs, there was a lot of petty back and forth. You know, I believe one program said they were going commercial free for the first 30 minutes. And then I think AEW, I think it was NXT first. NXT first said we're going to go 30 minutes commercial free, the first 30 minutes commercial free. And then AEW responded that they were going commercial free for the first 30 minutes. There was a point in time where Tony Khan kind of referred to Sean and Hunter as bald assholes. There was also a time where Tony Khan, there was a little statuette after both the programs, that there was a little statuette of Shawn Michaels being labeled the Booker of the Year. And Tony responded saying, based off of last night's show, he ruined any chance of that, which is a very, very interesting comment to say the least. But if we look at the programs side by side, I think both programs are great. And I think that overall it was just a great night for pro wrestling. If we look at what NXT was doing, obviously NXT is WWE's developmental territory that kind of gained a cult following over the past 5 years. And it's gone through many fluctuations and changes, but it's kind of hit its stride as a middle ground in the past year or so. And we saw John Cena accompany Carmelo Hayes to the ring against his match against Braun Breaker, who was accompanied by Paul Heyman. Now, part of the reason why I loved what was happening in NXT, as what was happening with Dynamite, is that everything made sense, right? If you know Carmelo Hayes, you know during the NXT breakout tournament that he said that what makes him distinct is ruthless aggression, which is something that John Cena said on his debut match against Kurt Angle in 2002. So we all know, and then on top of that, he's from Massachusetts. Like, there are so many comparisons between Carmelo Hayes and John Cena. And so the John Cena accompanying Carmelo to ringside, it made sense. Paul Heyman is a guy that needs no further introduction. This is a guy that's managed the likes of Brock Lesnar, The Big Show. He's managed a lot of great athletic talents. And so it comes as no surprise that Paul Heyman wants to manage Braun Breaker, even if it was for a one-time occurrence. It also kind of ties into the Bloodline storyline the same way Cena was accompanying Melo. Cena has been kind of, obviously sticking his nose in the Bloodline business. They just had him and LA Knight just had a tag team match this past week on Fastlane with Cena and LA Knight versus Jimmy and Solo. So obviously Paul Heyman is going to be there as a Bloodline presence, right, to accompany Braun Breaker, who kind of falls in the line of these big athletic superstars that Paul Heyman is used to managing. Also, if you looked at the NXT Anonymous Twitter account, you saw a little snippet of Paul Heyman kind of trying to persuade Ava Raine to the bloodline. Now, if you've been watching NXT, you know that Ava Raine is currently on her own. The Dyad, I believe is the name of the faction, is no longer a thing. The Grizzled Young Veterans have been released from WWE. Joe Gacy, a couple weeks ago or like a week before, said that he was on his own and that the Dyad was dead. And so Ava Raine is on her own. And what better way for her to, get into something else than to be persuaded to be a part of the bloodline? And, obviously there are some actual family ties with that. But I felt like there was a lot of things that NXT was doing, and it just made sense, right? And we can keep going because I have a little bit more time. We have Asuka versus Roxanne Perez, and one of the things that has been a very, very major thing in NXT is its women's division, specifically since the revival of Becky Lynch. Now, Asuka obviously is one of the longest reigning, she's one of the longest reigning NXT women's champions. So her returning to NXT just makes sense. And her going after her having a match of Roxanne Perez, someone who is billed as the protege, in my opinion, it also makes sense. So like there's just another thing there that, in my opinion, it just makes sense. And then Kiana James, she attacked, Roxanne Perez. Kiana is a heel, Roxanne is a face. There's no surprise there. They're both kind of in the running as being possible contenders for the NXT Women's Championship. And so, once again, that makes sense. We saw Tyler Bate become an honorary brawling brute. Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne were former, obviously they were rivals in NXT UK, but along with Trent Seven, they were part of British Strong Style. So once again, makes sense. And they were teaming together for this pub rules match, and I thought that was a pretty solid one. And then we got the NXT champion Ilya Dragunov versus Dirty Dominic Mysterio. Once again, Dom has been in NXT, most notably as a North American champion. He recently got his title back. And obviously Ilya Dragunov just gained his title for the first time. And so having that title versus title match is very similar to what we saw between Carmelo and Dom not too long ago. Not to mention that, Undertaker made an appearance at the end of NXT. How, you might ask? Because Braun Breaker has been billed as badass Braun Breaker. And at the end, Braun was like, "Oh, there's no one that is as bad of a badass than me." And then cues Undertaker's gong, cues the Undertaker. He comes out, and obviously he comes out as his American badass gimmick, which was perfect. And I thought it was great because, obviously the dead man persona has kind of been not really a thing, considering that kind of the mystique has been kind of stripped away ever since he retired. So him coming back as like a big homie, as like an OG with the motorcycle, I thought was a really, really cool moment. And once again, made sense. We also saw vignettes of Brian Pillman Jr. With a new name. Once again, made sense. So I felt like there was a lot of things that were happening in NXT that were great because it just made sense. And then we go over to AEW, and it's pretty much the same thing, right? We see, number one, it's billed as Title Tuesday. You know what? I'm going to pull this up because I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, okay? So AEW Dynamite has Title Tuesday. It's been billed as Title Tuesday. However, I guess one of the highlights of the show is the debut of Adam Copeland in an AEW ring. But we had so many different things going on. Eddie versus Minoru Suzuki for the Ring of Honor World Title. And obviously that went. We have an MJF promo at the end of the Jay White versus Hangman Adam Page match. And that's been controversial to say the least because of what we've been hearing in regards to the roll of quarters comment by Juice Robinson. To be honest, and it's controversial because of everything that has been happening in the world, especially as it pertains to Israel and Palestine. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'm still doing my research on that, on what's happening in Palestine and what's happening in Israel. And I wanted to do my research on what that reference meant. So I'm not going to comment on it yet. However, you know how we rock over here as far as our social stances on everything. So once I become a little bit more educated in that particular topic, I'll be able to comment on that. But then we have another Toni Storm. And let me just say this. Toni Storm is doing the best work of her career. This timeless Toni Storm gimmick, this like kind of like demented, twisted spin on a Marilyn Monroe kind of 50s, 60s movies character, I think is just perfect. So we have that. And then on top of that, we have a couple matches in which we see a couple people go over, right? We see Chris Jericho put over Powerhouse Hobbs. We see Adam Copeland, even though he's in the main event with Luchasaurus and Adam Copeland wins, Luchasaurus sticks it out. And Luchasaurus, sticks it out and gives him a run for his money. And I thought it was a great showcase. Then we have the whole Bryan Danielson Swerve. And we already know how Swerve is like on the up and up. But I am very, very, hold on. I gotta make sure that this is right. My bad, y'all. But yeah, I mean, like, we had some very, very impressive showings on AEW as well, right? And so, we also have Orange Cassidy. That's the one thing that I was like a little bit puzzled about. Orange Cassidy regaining the AEW International Championship. I know it was supposed to be Rey Fenix versus Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley was not medically able to compete. He was not medically cleared. And so because of that, it was Rey versus Orange Cassidy. The only reason why that threw me off a little bit is because I felt like there was a storyline that was kind of developing in which Orange Cassidy was like in the middle of a little of an identity crisis. When he initially lost the title to Jon Moxley, it was like, man, I've been a champion for so long. I don't know who I am without it. And, granted, you got to make things work. And, Rey and OC is the champion again, and I'm happy for him. But I feel like if we had a little bit more time with that story, I felt like it would have hit a little bit harder when it was time for him to either win the international title back or him getting a new championship. So there was that. We have Saraya and Shida for the AEW World Women's title match. And Shida won. And to be honest, I was a little bit shocked on that. That was a little bit off-putting just because I feel like the unfortunate thing outside of Toni Storm, like why do we have to have a random title change in order for us to have a sudden interest in the women's division at AEW? I feel like good booking and good storytelling can go a lot further than just random title swaps. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like this could have been a little bit built up a little better. Granted, it was a good little pop moment. It was a good little, way to kind of garner engagement and garner ratings. But I don't know. That just felt a little bit weird and a little bit off to me. So, but nevertheless, we actually have numbers pertaining to ratings. And this is ratings pertaining to, I'm actually going to find out the actual thing. Yeah, these are ratings. They're pertaining to the Title Tuesday edition of Dynamite in comparison to NXT. So it has been reported that AEW Dynamite last night on TBS had a 609K viewers, and the 18 to 49 rating is a 0.26. We have the NXT program last night on the USA Network, 921,000 viewers with a 0.3 rating amongst viewers from the ages of 18 to 49. So clearly, WWE, beat AEW. And yes, you can attribute it to the star power that they have. But simultaneously, if you've been watching NXT, this is kind of a part of a new formula for them, right? Like, I almost forgot to mention, WWE was petty. Not gonna lie, they were petty. Cody Rhodes being the GM for the night, Jade making a random appearance. And, it was kind of talked about that she would be bouncing around from show to show until she lands on a brand. However, I don't think that it was by accident. And then on top of that, the Brian Pillman Jr. vignette, all of these guys were former AEW guys, and they made sure that those guys got front and center attention during this show. Not to mention that LA Knight served as a special guest referee for that NXT title match. And that was just smart. LA Knight is currently the most popular guy in WWE. So can you say that WWE only beat AEW because of its star power? Absolutely, you can. However, if you watch NXT, you know that this is not something that is out of the ordinary or random. We know that pretty much all of Judgment Day has gone through NXT. Rhea, Dom, Finn, and Damian on occasion, but specifically Rhea and Dom have been in NXT regularly. Obviously, we saw Ali when he was employed with WWE. He was a part of NXT for a little bit. We saw Baron Corbin in NXT for a little bit. Obviously, Becky Lynch being the new NXT Women's Champion, her being in NXT for a little bit. So even before this kind of star-studded show, there have been main roster people that have been coming down to NXT to work and do right by the locker room there. And so, yes, they have star power, and they brought out The Undertaker and Paul Heyman and John Cena. And those are all needle-making moves, but I feel like that doesn't mean anything if you don't have a good product. And the fact of the matter is that whether you want to acknowledge it or not, or if you've been living under a rock or not, the NXT that we are currently seeing and enjoying is a lot different from the NXT a year ago and a lot different from the NXT a year before that. And it's a very, very polished product. And Sean has been doing a tremendous job from top to bottom of the show, and even specializing in some things that Tony Khan has been struggling with, like booking the women's division. So hats off to NXT for that, securing that victory. However, I do think that the whole AEW slander is crazy. I feel like it is the competition, and it is essentially kind of AEW's kind of ability to kind of really put it on WWE when they were going back and forth on Wednesday night. I feel like NXT wanted to just kind of prove that they are still a viable wrestling product that people want to watch. And an alternative to the alternative, I guess you can say. But I honestly just feel like, I just feel like this is a great day for wrestling overall. And there were so many great things that were happening on both shows. I feel like both ratings could have been significantly better had they not been competing with like the playoffs or anything amongst those lines. But one of the things that I noticed, one of the things that I've been noticing is Tony Khan's Twitter activity. And to me, it's just, it's so cringe because I feel like you put on such a great product. You know what I mean? You put on such a great product, you put on such a great show, and then you want to bury Sean. And it's like, okay, I guess WWE's taking shots at you and you feel like you got to fire back. But I don't know. It's just cringe to me. The whole Tony Khan versus the McMahon thing is just so cringe. It's just not worth it. You know what I'm saying? Unless there's just something that they know that we don't know. But it's just such a cringe thing. And seeing him on Twitter clap back at just random people, it's like, bro, you're the CEO of a damn near $1 billion company. Why do you feel the need to be clapping at these people who have no relevance and hold no importance in the world of wrestling? But, that's just a me thing. But, Tuesday was a very interesting night. I want to know what you guys felt about it. But that's pretty much the end of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Next week, I believe Mo will be back. And we're going to have a great show. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day, rest of your night, rest of your weekend. And I look forward to seeing y'all soon. Later. Bye.